What's up, everybody? Welcome to CanesInSight Live. It's Thursday evening. Figured it'd be a good time to have a chat. A lot of stuff going on. Open forum, loose atmosphere. Just let the questions rip. We got Pete. We got the super insider Seth, longtime Hurricanes contributor, supporter. The man, very well groomed, as you can see, ready for prime time here. So listen, get your questions in. And we got a lot to talk about with the portal. Obviously, Thomas Gore going in today. Some interesting names available to Miami. No secret that Miami's on the hunt for a defensive tackle, a defensive end, a nickel corner. Could they do a clean sweep of all three? Would do a very big service to the defense and to Lance Guidry to add three people at that position. There's some people available. Let's see if they can close. Seth, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Doing well, man. Doing well, Seth. We haven't spoke. You came on a live show. I mean, maybe a month plus ago now, right? So
yeah, after the spring scrimmage, I think, or right before, one or the other, before or after, right before.
Yeah, but we haven't had a chance to talk to you since the spring game, right? And I know
Correct.
You had a chance to see, multiple practices and get to kind of see things up close. Was the spring game pretty much indicative of what you saw throughout the, most of the spring?
I do. I think that the offensively, actually, in the spring game, even though it was vanilla, Cam came to play and it showed, and he had a great game, and the offense as a whole looked well. Not to go too fast forward because I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but the additions that we're adding, obviously, from the portal are just going to make it that much better. And then defensively, it kind of like made me think. I know that when we had spoken, I had said, it was hard for me to determine like standout guys on defense. Maybe in retrospect, maybe that's because they're having some issues with standout guys jumping out of the practices, and this is why you have the people leaving, hopefully people coming, and so it's kind of exciting that they obviously identified it. And again, well, I'm sure we're going to talk about the portal and all that, so we can get into that later. And then the other thing that since that time that's really caught my eye, I know everyone's spoken about this before, it's the talent and the should we be winning, how much talent we have. But after the draft and seeing the teams that were in the top 5 or top 10 and how many draft picks that they had versus what we had, it's a slap in the face. We just aren't there yet, but I do think we're building into there. But it was really a realization. Maybe I was a little bit in denial that we have more talent than we have, but apparently not.
Yeah, well, D Money and I did an episode. It was really D's study and research, so to speak, where he really went through how far away Miami is. Now with the portal, I think some of these numbers will change, and a lot of these guys are hopefully going to be one and done with a great season and heading to the NFL, obviously. But yeah, it's the changing game, and some of the numbers, if you guys haven't had a chance to see it already. But we got some questions coming in here, and just wanted to Eric Cooks, appreciate it, man. Appreciate you coming on here and supporting the show. Appreciate everyone who's on here right now live. But I'm going to start bringing some questions up here.
Let's do it.
D, asking about Eugene Wilson, something you've been talking about.
Well, look, so first, there's going to be a lot of questions to this. So here's what I'll say. People are asking about Miami losing a player, a big name, offensive lineman. I've heard the same rumors you all have. And here's what I'll say. There are times where that smoke and those rumors are correct. And maybe sometimes the players or the family members of the players or, high school coaches or people outside the building, had the scoop, right? And everybody else finds out later. So I'm giving you that disclaimer. Me personally, talking to people who I think would know, have not heard some of the rumors or not, telling me that's the fact, some of the rumors that are going around. Now, again, maybe it's news to these people. That happens. But if you're asking me right now, after having talked to a few people about the rumors going around, I'm told that, I don't expect a shocking name in the portal. I guess it depends what you find as shocking. But again, Sometimes the shocks come to everybody, and everybody finds out at the same time. So I'm using that as a disclaimer. I'm trying to be as honest as possible. I have not heard. I've heard the rumors, but I have not heard from sources that we're losing somebody big. But again, people can be surprised. But that is the latest as of 8:35. And like I said, I've been hearing the rumors and talking to people, and that would, as of an hour or so ago, somebody who would know had not heard that. But again, that's why they're called shocks. Sometimes they shock everybody. So that's the.
So if I could interject, not necessarily directly answering that question, but I will say this, that unlike some past coaches and staffs, thus far, everyone that's left from our end that's gone into the portal, we're aware. Like there's a discussion with those players. We have plans in motion, and sometimes it's better for those players to move on because we're looking to bring in players to basically take their playing time. The offensive line, I don't know anything myself. I agree with you, D. I haven't heard anything. It doesn't mean anybody can't go, and it doesn't mean that coaches don't know. They don't tell us everything. They tell us, we know a lot, but sometimes they keep it to the shelf because maybe the player may or may not go, and so they're not going to let that leak because they don't know themselves. But the players that have gone thus far, if you watch the trail, it's telling what their needs are, what they want, especially on the defensive side of the ball. These players aren't leaving us, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? The coaches know what they're doing. They're looking for players to replace them actively.
Yep. So well said, Seth. By the way, Matthew Catalina, thank you for saying what we should be saying. Like and subscribe to this podcast. Yes. Tell your friends. Let's get this thing rolling. Appreciate you, Matthew. So some questions here on D'Angelo Pons. John Dennehy asking, how do you think Miami's looking with D'Angelo Pons? D'Angelo Pons is somebody that I highlighted as a sleeper before his senior year at Chaminade. I really like the player. I was surprised he wasn't getting more interest from FBS schools. Ended up going to James Madison, which just moved up to FBS, and was a freshman All-America. There's a 5'9", 165, maybe 170 now, corner, slot corner, nickel corner, out of Chaminade, played with JoJo Trader, played with Jeremiah Smith, played with all those guys, Aquan Patterson, was a year older, went to James Madison, was a freshman All-America there, had 12 pass deflections. This is what I wrote about him back before his senior year, and he's 150 at that time. But you saw the speed, and he's actually improved on those times since then. He was state champion 100 and 200, very smooth and very willing tackler and very good instincts. I mean, he's a real corner. He's not just a track star. Question is going to be the size. He entered the portal. Miami has a major need at nickel corner. They have interest in Pons. He, from what I'm told, talking to people around his camp, has a lot of interest in Miami. He wants to stay home, or people around him wants to stay home. So it seems like a fit. I think there's an evaluation process. Obviously, the size is the first thing you're checking to make sure this guy's big enough to play in the ACC. But I think freshman All-America, this kind of speed, this kind of instincts, there's a need at Miami at nickel. They want a nickel corner to move Mish Powell to safety. So it seems like a fit, and I would watch that. I mentioned before, defensive end, defensive tackle, nickel. So you're watching D'Angelo Pons at nickel, potentially. You're watching Tyler Barron, who visited last weekend at defensive end. And you're watching, of course, Simeon Barrow at defensive tackle. So those are the three areas of need. There's three guys available, and let's see what happens. I think Miami feels good about the work that they've done, at least with the first two. And I know that Pons has a lot of interest. So we'll see how that plays out.
Question here about running back from Corey DiBiase. Would we go after another running back in the portal, change of pace running back if Chris Johnson isn't ready yet?
I don't think so. Remember, you still have A.J. Allen, and A.J. Allen is a talented player.
And Jordan Lyle coming in,
yep.
was rated as the #1 running back in the country by On3, I believe it was, right? So,
yeah, talking to people, and Seth, I know you're up in Broward. Talking to people about Jordan Lyle, the expectation I get is similar to Mark Fletcher.
Yeah,
different body, although Lyle's not small by any means. Lyle's an every down back body-wise, but his impact. Projected impact and projected role similar to Fletcher. Obviously, you got Martinez now, so you got a solid starter. But don't sleep on Jordan Lyle, and I wouldn't sleep on A.J. Allen either.
Agreed.
And Chris Johnson, here's a Chris Johnson. A quick spiel on him. he bounces outside too much. He's still learning how to be a running back. He's a track star. Just like we said with D'Angelo Pons, how D'Angelo Pons won the 100 and 200, so did Chris Johnson with even faster times. And to me, I think you might hear in practice, you might hear people say Chris Johnson is bouncing outside too much. He's not picking it up. They might be right. And, maybe that might even be coming from people that are seeing him. But the second he busts a 70-yard run in a game, when it's well blocked and he just outruns everybody immediately forgets. I've seen this happen with players like Chris Johnson that are just such playmakers that maybe you focus on their flaws, and then when they get in the game and make a big play, you're like, we need that again. That changes scoreboard. So I won't judge Chris Johnson until I see him in a game, because I suspect with this big offensive line, with Inez Cooper and Mao Noah on the right side, you're going to see some clear lanes for Chris Johnson. And when he gets in the open, according to track times, he's arguably the fastest player in the country.
Yeah, and with Lyle in particular as well, and you could say this for Chris Johnson, even though he's coming into a second year, but running back is a position where young guys can make an impact, right? Some of these, we all have high expectations for a Justin Scott and Artavius Jones on the defensive line coming in as 5-star type talents, but that position is not always plug and play in the interior of the defensive line. Not to say they can't come in and make an impact, but running back's a spot where, like, you can come in and listen, there's not much. I don't want to diminish what the position is, but there's less to pick up in terms of the playbook, right? There's ways to get those guys the ball where they can just get the ball and go, right? So to me, I think Lyle's someone that people are kind of forgetting about a little bit.
Not the coaches.
Not the coaches, but I think some, the fans, right? When we have these discussions about the running back position.
And I'll raise my hand as far as I thought Jordan Lyle was a little smaller than he is, because I hadn't seen him in person in a long time. And then I saw him at practice. Seth, you were probably there. He looked a lot bigger than I expected him to look. He looked, compared to our running backs now, like he's not Henry Parrish. He's not, he's big. He's got size on him. He's only going to get. So Luis Delgadillo wants to know, hypothetical question: if we land the DT, DE, and Pons, would you rank Miami top 10 in the preseason? No bias. I mean, I'm biased the other way because I've seen them fall short so many times that it's hard for me to rank them in the top 10 because I've just seen the story. But I mean, if you look at what the players did at other spots with Cam Ward, judged off what he did outside of Miami uniform, and Damian Martinez, what he did outside of Miami uniform, and what the offensive line did last year, what a guy like Sam Brown did outside of Miami uniform, what Restrepo and George did. I mean, if you just look at it objectively, this offense is loaded. And then defensively, if you land Barron, you're talking about four proven defensive ends and some good linebackers. Defensive back will have some questions. So I can't put him there because I've seen them fail so many times the last 2 decades. But I'm not going to be surprised if other people put him there, put it that way.
I agree. I'm scarred. So it's hard to put us in the top 10, but I know that we're definitely these players. They're a big deal, and they definitely are big additions. And we'll see what happens. But they got to prove it to most of the fans, or if not all the fans. They got to prove it. It's been a long 20 years.
I'll tell you the truth. The pickup I'm most excited about right now is Sam Brown, a wide receiver. I think he brings a different dimension. He's put up 800 plus yards last year with a not much of a quarterback situation over there at Houston, and you see some of the testing numbers that he has, and I think again, what you're getting back in Jacoby George and Restrepo. You hope Jacoby continues to take that next step. I think you know what Restrepo is by the numbers, a top 10 receiver in the country, right? And as reliable as it gets. But Brown gives you that, not only a deep threat, but after the catch, I think he's just a different weapon that this offense was lacking.
Canes Cats, he wants to know, how can you do a live show during a baseball game? I'm limited on my live show options because I have my kids' baseball games. So I got 3 or 4 baseball games a week. So it's hard to find time for these streams. So unfortunately, it's during the baseball game. I'll be at the light tomorrow. If anyone's going, look for me, say what's up. I'll be at the light. But Miami's winning 2-1. Gage Zeal, 9 strikeouts. Looks like he's thrown 94 pitches, so he might be towards the end here. But unbelievable performance by Gage Zeal. He's given Miami a chance to win pretty much every time he's gone out the last month or so, month and a half.
D, shout out to the 3 Live Canes who did their return show to Canes Insight. I was just showing Steve-O, our boy Steve-O, one of the 3 Live Canes, his breakdown of Jordan Lyle, if you guys haven't checked that out. But yeah, they're back, and they'll be here every week. So they have a great community they've built, and you guys check that show out if you have not already.
Yeah, those guys are awesome, and they bring a different vibe. It's just a great show and a great addition to the squad. Really, just a return to the squad. So happy to have those guys back. You guys will like it. Wednesdays at 9, they go to work. So what else we got here? T. West wants to hear anything on Terrence Brooks, the cornerback from Memphis or Texas. I've not heard anything on him.
Me either.
Juan Manuel wants to know, what do you think about Marquise Bell at left or right tackle and Mauanoa at right guard? It's interesting. So I think Markel Bell, they're still trying to get him ready. He's getting better, but he's coming in raw. So it's going to take some development with him to be truly game ready with this competitive offensive line. But there are people who think Mauanoa's best position is left guard or right guard in the pros long term. So could you see that maybe down the road? Depends on what the kid wants to do. Although I suspect, he's such a team first guy, and there is an NFL element to it that maybe that makes sense for him. But that's when you recruit a lot of tackle bodies and guys that can play tackle, you have good options because you can move guys inside as opposed to playing a guard that's not equipped to play on the outside. So this is a good problem where you have multiple guys that can play tackle and some potentially at guard.
D, how about this tweet from earlier in terms of, there's been a number of guys that have left Miami recently, but there's this graphic here with some numbers on Georgia's recruiting 2022 class. 29 players signed, and pretty much half the class is transferred out. And you added the note that this is what it's going to look like in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is how it is. You try to find keepers, and sometimes it's not going to work out. Some of those guys are going to end up being NFL players for other schools. You saw a lot of transfers that went to the NFL draft. Those guys, still had NFL talent at their first stop, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. So that's part of the game. It's going to be a bigger part of the game. The key is, how does the roster in 2024 look compared to the roster that we saw in January of 2022? And I think it looks a lot better at every position.
It goes both ways. So basically, the players come in and they want to leave maybe because they want to play more, for whatever reason. But it also goes to the team. We get to bring in 20 guys, 24 guys. Some of them aren't matches, and they go, and you bring in replacements. So it kind of goes both ways. So the teams that do it well, the schools that do it well, they can utilize the transfer portal and fill in what they didn't get or what they thought they were going to get and didn't get from the recruits, the high school recruits. So that's what's happening with the good schools now. Georgia, UM is trying to do that. That's what they're doing. Plug and play, plug and replace.
That's it.
Question here from Kevin Dennis. Excuse me. Do they see a future with Chase Smith, Bobby Washington at linebacker? D and Seth, I'll let you guys get into it more. But listen, if they're on the roster going into this season, I think this staff expects them to have something to say on the field this season. And a Chase Smith, if he's healthy, which it seems like he's healthy, right? We know what he is athletically. He's put a lot of good weight on. He's a veteran there at that position, which is important. Bobby Washington can fly around. Been excited about his upside. So, listen, why not?
Yeah, both guys can play special teams as well. At a minimum, with their ability to run and hits. Chase Smith was a very good special teams player. Bobby Washington is kind of born for special teams. So that's something to watch. And then, linebacker is one of those positions where you don't know what you have until they're on the field and you see their instincts and their ability to find the ball. So these guys, I wouldn't count, as long as they're on the roster, they got a chance because they have a lot of physical tools, length. Bobby Washington is the fastest linebacker by far. He probably runs a 4.4, and he's 6'2", 6'3", and not that skinny, pretty lean. So he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, so Bobby, I know the coaches like that. I don't know what he'll do this year, but he's definitely someone that I think they want to keep on the roster. And then Chase is interesting because Chase obviously has been hurt most of his career, and he's definitely a physical specimen. Of all the, I keep saying I didn't see people make on the defense side that many plays during all those practices, but actually Chase made plays, especially coming in after the quarterback, coming off the edge or wherever, blitzing, whatever he was doing. So if he's on the roster, I agree with Peter. If he's on the roster, they're expecting him to make plays and to play.
Yep. So that's a good problem to have.
Yes.
To how we've been in the past. Let's see here. Bagging up 4 wants to know, D, are you a fan of the run scheme? Do you think Martinez will change the way Dawson spams inside zone? We're going to do a podcast about this topic with Coach Zuckerman, talking about inside zone versus duo and some of the nuances of the run game. So stay tuned for that. I think, Pete, you talked to a scout, and I was, talking to you right after, where he mentioned that Martinez played a lot in the dot. The quarterback was under center. Martinez had time to get the ball, kind of old school running, pick up steam, and read the hole and hit it hard. This is going to be a little different. I think it'll be fine. You saw with Mark Fletcher last year have a lot of success. Martinez is a more advanced version of Fletcher at this point, from what I've seen. And I watched a lot of both of them yesterday. I was actually watching them from back to back because I wanted to get a feel for kind of this topic that you're bringing up right now, bagging up. And I think he's going to be fine. Similar to what you saw with Fletcher last year. But again, Pete spoke to a scout who raised that concern about Martinez going from a traditional kind of eye back, picking up the head of steam with the quarterback under center versus just getting right there in the shotgun. It's going to be an adjustment.
And look, these scouts look at it in a lens of they project, right? Because they like to see at the next level, what's it going to look like? And he's going. So in college football, Martinez is 1,000-yard rusher and on a load to bring down, right? It's these interesting things that come up and make you think. But that's what I told the guy I was talking to. I said, well, Mark Fletcher similarly was a bigger back, and doesn't, maybe takes a little bit to get going downhill. But once he gets going downhill, it's tough to bring him down. And I think Martinez, a bit different than him, right? But I'm not too concerned with it. It's something to watch.
It's an interesting tidbit, but again, on the offensive side of the ball, got to be a better offensive line that we have here, and just even the overall talent in general. Great quarterback, they can't just. I don't think they're going to stack the box, so he should. I will
say that, and that's sorry to cut you off, but people I think are underrating how good that Oregon State O-line was as well. It was, and listen, we have high expectations for this O-line, but that was no slouch of an offensive line over there either. So. Listen, I have high hopes for him, and I think he's going to do great here. What you just said is 100% true as well. The way that we expect them to spread it out with the weapons that they have on the perimeter and at the tight end position, obviously Cam Ward at quarterback, the pressure, the defensive coordinator is going to really have to pick his poison.
Correct. That's what I see it.
Kevin Denny's wants to know anything on King Mac. There's a couple of King Mac questions. So it's funny. I made a post about before his senior season of high school about sleepers that I liked. 3-star under guys. King Mac was one of them. He ultimately became a 4-star later. But I talked about Pons, the guy from James Madison, the nickel corner just jumped in the portal we talked about earlier. And I also identified Mac as someone I liked. He played special teams this year, every game, I believe, for Penn State. He's a major sprinter, took away the ball at safety. I like him. I always have liked him. I'm not sure we had a huge grade on him coming out. They're saying he's going to visit Alabama. Pete just pulled up the tweet. So I don't see us getting in that mix, but I'm not surprised Alabama's trying to get this guy because even though he didn't play defense a lot last year, he played every game, And I think this guy's got really, really, really good physical tools. Penn State produces freaks. Obviously, he's leaving Penn State, but they're very good at finding guys with those freakish combine tools. I think Mac's the kind of guy that you're watching the combine in a couple of years, and he's running 4.3. He was, again, a 3-star, rose up to a top 100 recruit. A lot of it because of his track times and what he was able to do taking away the ball. So I like the kid. I'm not sure he's a Miami guy, not because he's not good enough, just because I don't see that being a fit.
Question here: what are NFL scouts saying about this team overall? Do they think there's enough talent to win the ACC? It's a little bit of a loaded question because some of Miami's best players on this team are the young guys, the sophomores now, and players who aren't necessarily, the scouts aren't going in there and watching, right? But in terms of the scouts are going in there watching the upperclassmen or the guys that they expect to be draft picks, right? Now, the expectation is they're very excited about the offensive line. Jalen Rivers is a guy coming back who's been there for a while. Francis Mauanoa, of course, even though he's not a guy who's draft eligible this year, they know who he is, right? And again, the reputation that follows Mario. His brother Kiko coming back was a big one. He was a guy who was probably going to get drafted late this year, has a chance to improve his stock, right? Akeem Mesidor, if he was healthy last year, probably would have gone on and been a mid-round pick. Could have been a top 100 pick again if he was healthy and produced, right? So that's an NFL talent there. But there are still some questions, right? Cam Ward, we're all excited about him, but if he came out this year, was going to be a 6th, 7th to undrafted player, which is why he comes back with a great opportunity if he blows it out of the water to be one of the top quarterbacks selected in this draft. But these are projections, right? Again, I'm basing off what they're saying. Like if he came out this last year, this is where he was. So to me, I read it as he's got work to do. We're excited about it. We think he has the talent and the ability to do it. But I think once they come back, the scouts come back around now during fall, because they aren't really there during they're there in spring to do the pro day stuff and for these guys coming out, right? They may talk about some of the younger guys, but now in fall again, when they come back, they're basing a lot of this stuff off what they saw last year. So it's a bit of a long answer there, but that's best as I can answer it.
Well said.
All right.
Any questions here you want to bring up?
Steve Avea wants to know how we're looking with Solomon Thomas and Dallas Wilson. They're right in the mix for both. Solomon Thomas was. There we go. Sorry, Solomon Thomas keeps hitting the wrong button here. Solomon Thomas was on campus for spring. Dallas Wilson should be here soon on a visit. Maurice Lewis wants to know what are the top priorities for Miami in recruiting for 2025. I assume wide receiver and DB. Yeah, I would say corner. They got to get some premium corners, some first-round pick corners, to me, and defensive backs in general. We need defensive back first-round picks. And to me, I see DJ Pickett, top 10 player, 10.5, 10.6 in the 100, run the 6'4", has the size and speed you want. Ben Hanks, 4.4 kid, tested out of this world, 6'1", elite cover guy already, doesn't need a lot of development. Bryce Fitzgerald, another guy who tested extremely well, can play receiver, can play corner, and is a very good safety. For Raw, we had a 7-on-7 coach, and Hank's a 7-on-7 coach, Jose Duaso, on the podcast recently. So those are guys that we need to add, in my opinion, and we need defensive backs in general that you can see in the NFL draft.
Defense, defense, defense.
Shout out to Josh. Appreciate the comment. Brian Taylor.
I'm gonna have to get off here in a minute, D. Some of our teams are still playing in the in the playoffs here.
Oh, no, it's an unusual feeling for you. But it's a shame that Miami was beat up with the East so wide open that the Knicks are even a team that's still playing.
Listen, some
but-
teams use injuries as excuses. Some use it to springboard their season. The Knicks are dealing with their highest paid player is injured as well. So it is what it is. But shout out to the Ibis Vintage, by the way, for the the throwback hat here. Check them out on Instagram. But yeah, guys, I'm gonna hop off here. But appreciate everyone for hopping on. And these guys are gonna keep it going.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. We got a question about Walter Burke about Jaden Mangum for the U as a safety. I have not heard safety. I've heard nickel, but he entered the portal after I got my last update on that position. So I don't know, but I've not heard anything on the Jaden Mangum. I think the idea is get a nickel and then move Mish Powell to safety, where Jaden Harris has played really well alongside him. I think that makes some sense.
I heard the same thing, and they're looking. So I don't know if the Michigan State safety is the guy or whatever. They're actively pursuing and looking, and they're not going to just take somebody. So they want their guy. So we'll see what happens.
All right, let's see. Carlos Cruz, any DT options in case we whiff on Barrow? I think they're monitoring other names, but they want Barrow. They want Barrow for sure. That's where they're locked in on. So there's no question that Barrow is the guy at the moment. Let's see here. We still got Dio saying go Knicks. New York Canes. I like Canes from the big cities.
Yep.
Let's see here. Please help my sanity. I don't know if I can help you there. Let's see here. Sorry, this computer's glitching, so I'm clicking a lot of the wrong comments. So you guys are coming with fast and furious. By the way, appreciate the activity here. You guys are really bringing it. So let's see. FTW, is Devontae Adams a fair comparison for Brown? Look, I mean, that would be a great result for Sam Brown to be Devontae Adams. I think Devontae Brown is more of a craftsman, whereas Sam Brown's really an athlete. Sam Brown was a combine warrior at the high school level, 4.45 verified, 38 vertical leap. He was second in the long jump in the state. He played both ways. He played basketball, threw down some dunks. So Sam Brown really was an athlete, whereas Devontae Brown is not the best athlete in the world. He's just very much a technician. So if Sam Brown can get some of that technique with his athletic ability, the sky is the limit. But I think Brown, to me, I don't look at him as much as a craftsman like a Devontae Adams. I look at him more as an athlete. But we need an athlete. We need some size. He brings that. He's been productive, and I think Cam Moore is going to be happy to have him. And look, I know Seth, you saw the receivers in spring, some really nice talent at that position. So adding a name like this to the mix, it'll only take it to another level.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we needed was a go-getter, an athlete that gets the ball, and this is supposed to be the guy. I mean, his film, he definitely is a physical specimen, and he definitely, if you look at his film, goes and gets the ball. So that's what we're looking for.
100%. The size is big. JAC, it's been said that elite teams need 5 to 6 difference makers. I count 3: Cam, Bain, Martinez. Who else would you name as a difference maker? Maybe Restrepo. It's a great question, and we need difference makers. Bain is one. Cam hopefully is one. That is a major need. I would say Restrepo is a difference maker because even though he's not a traditional size of a difference-making receiver, you kind of have to know where he is at all times because the quarterback is going to target him. So I would say he does make a difference, even though it comes in a different package. There needs to be guys that emerge. We would need to see maybe a Messidor, maybe a Tyler Barron if he comes, maybe a Francisco Mauanoa. I think offensive line too. Ines Cooper, Francis Mauanoa, Jalen Rivers. These guys are offensive linemen. You don't think of them as difference makers, but these are pretty special offensive linemen. I don't know if anybody else jumps out to you, Seth.
Well, I will say this. So I like to, when I get to meet players and talk to players, I ask them different questions. And one of the questions I usually ask, I asked Kiko, I said, who makes you wake up at night? What, on the offense side of the ball? And he's like, without hesitation, Restrepo. He said that guy worries us all. Can't cover him. Always is open, making plays. That's an answer. I mean, yeah, I put him there. He's a difference maker. And as far as the other guys, yeah, there's guys that need to step up to get to that 5 or 6, but they're there. Let's see what we have to wait and see what happens. Like, we're not fortune tellers. We can't necessarily say who, but could be one of the linebackers. It could be definitely an offensive lineman. And that's a pretty easy. Someone on that offensive line side of the ball. Could be a receiver. Could be a tight end. Got to wait and see.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that are really high on Arroyo. You saw him in spring. I personally think Arroyo's due for a big year. I know it's someone that we both know who, is familiar with the team, very familiar with the team, thinks that Arroyo is the best NFL prospect on the team. This is someone that knows football and has been deeply involved in the game for a long time. So, that's a name too. Here's one, Seth, I know you have opinions on, from Assad Hussein. What freshman is most likely to be biggest impact? I'll give you a list of guys that are on my radar, and then Seth will chime in. But I would say Elijah Lofton, Jordan Lyle for the reasons we mentioned earlier, JoJo Trader and Nikar receiver, Bobby Pruitt at linebacker. Those would be the names that jump out to me. What do you got, Seth?
Of all those guys, Lofton is the guy. Could be wrong, but Lofton is the guy. He fits his team. He's a utility knife, and I think from every practice he did something. Every practice he was involved. But there are all those guys that I love the 2 young receivers, love them. I just don't know how much they're going to get on the field. Not that they don't have the talent, but now that you added another receiver, and we have some players there, so what will they get on the field to do? And then on the defensive side of the ball, any one of those young guys, because there's definitely room on the defensive side of the ball for someone to come in maybe in the beginning of the year with limited playing time, but then make plays, and then by the end of the year making a huge impact. So I would say Lofton's the biggest guy.
Yep, he's a special football player.
He's a special guy. He's a football player, and sometimes you just need them. You need the dogs, the guys that make plays.
Gio says it doesn't seem like we've aggressively pursued elite portal entries at safety with Riley now gone. As well as there a quiet confidence that Zaquan is going to play a much bigger role than we think. I would say, first of all, Mish Powell was a big ticket item at safety. A lot of teams wanted Mish Powell. He was starting off a championship team, team that played in the championship, guy with a lot of experience, versatility. He could play nickel, he could play corner, he could play safety. Mish Powell was a big ticket item at safety. That was not cheap, and that was not something that they didn't have to fight for. I will say, I do think Zaquan is going to play a bigger role than maybe people think. He got here in spring. He's done a really nice job. He's physically ready. James Williams played a lot his freshman year, and I think he's a little better at this point. So that would be something to keep an eye on.
So ironically, the same question I asked Cam on the defensive side of the ball, he said Mish. He said that guy is everywhere and drove him crazy. And he was covering a lot of times with Restrepo, which made it a little bit harder. It was a good matchup. I think that they're still looking for it. It could be the young guy, but I think that they're in the win now. And so I don't know if, the young guys they want to put him in, especially the first game of the season against, UF. But if they don't find the guy they want in the portal, they're not going to take a guy for the sake of taking them, especially with the money that's involved. But if they find their guy, they're going to bring him in. If not, it could be the young guy.
Yeah. And then don't forget Jaden Harris, who looks very solid,
Yep.
and Marquise Williams, who's done a much better job. Those guys are still here for a reason, because they have talent. And Jaden Harris in particular, I think, has been playing at a starter caliber level in terms of size, speed, physicality, attitude, the whole nine. I think Jaden Harris has more there than people think. He's a talented player, and he's doing the right things. So Jeff Lynn, a very loyal listener, wants to know, do I know if Allen or Fletcher will be back for fall camp? I think Allen should be okay. Fletcher is going to be you got to be careful with him because of the nature of foot injuries.
Fletcher, they're going to slow play. They do not want – they want him to be 100%, 150%, And so if they don't think he's ready, they're not going to bring him just to bring him in. And Allen should be ready.
Yep. Oh man, I'm hearing the comments on the baseball team here. I'm not watching the game. I'm assuming they blew this lead.
Really?
From Gage Zeal. Tell me in the comments what happened, Marrero. I want to know what happened to Gage. I mean, he looked like he was unstoppable. 10 strikeouts, but what can you do? New King God wants to know, how does Miami stack up against Texas, Oregon, and Bama? I mean, it's hard to say. Here's one thing I'll say. I like their quarterback. Now, those three teams have good quarterbacks, but I think Cam Ward can play with any of those quarterbacks. I will say
Texas, Bama, and Georgia in particular, the depth that they have from top to bottom is still more than us.
Yep.
We're building. But
yep. I think defensive back is going to be a weakness for Miami when you compare it to the top teams. I think defensive tackle will be a weakness when you compare Miami to the top teams.
Because of the depth.
Because of the depth and the size, right? Mm-hmm. The size at those positions, I think Miami still has work to do, but they're in the right direction. So apparently Brian Walters came in and gave up a homer in the ninth, 2-2. Walter's a good player too. That's unfortunate. But what can you do? Cliff D saying Miami's probably ranked around 40th. I think you'd be surprised at where Miami goes in the preseason polling. I'm not saying they are that team, but Miami's going to get a lot of love because these writers have seen Cam Ward. They've seen Damian Martinez on other teams. They know those guys are good. So no matter what they think about Miami as a program the last 20 years, these are players that have a rep. Restrepo has a rep. Ruben Bain has a rep. This offensive line has a rep. These are guys that national writers recognize as big-time players and other coaches recognize as big-time players. So I think that's something that's a little different from where Miami is now than where Miami's been in the past.
Yeah, in today's day, offense rules the show, and I think that people are aware of our offensive skills. So 40 might be a little bit much. 25, maybe.
Here's a great question from Asad Hussein. Give me your 4 guys you want rushing the quarterback on third down. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to add a free agent. And I don't know that this guy's locked and loaded. I really don't. But I know he's a big target. And in a perfect world, it'd be nice to have Bain and Messidor inside, Tyler Barron, Elijah Alston outside. Tyler Barron, the Tennessee transfer that Miami is courting heavily right now, who can also play inside himself and did that a little bit at Tennessee. But Bain and Messidor inside, Alston and Barron outside. If that's not the case, replace Barron with like whatever young rusher, steps to the forefront, or potentially a name I keep forgetting. Why shouldn't it be? Because he had a great spring. Malik Bryant. Malik Bryant could also be in that mix as well if you move those guys inside, because he had a really, really good spring. People are excited about the direction that Malik Bryant is going in.
Malik Bryant and Chase Smith, both those guys, that linebacker that can rush.
Yep. Kane's Cat wants to know, give me your prediction for the D-line 2 deep. I mean, there's 2 big targets, big pieces of that you're looking at with Barron and with Barrow, Simeon Barrow from Michigan State. Those dominoes still need to fall. Obviously, if they come to Miami, you put them in the 2 deep. I would say Bain, Messidor, Cook, Marley Cook, CJ Clark, Elijah Alston. Again, Barron, if not Barron, Malik Bryant. If not, and then alongside Barrow, I could see. I really want Joshua Horton to take that job. He's been hurt, but I think Josh Horton has the talent to take it. Moton's in that mix. Could Justin Scott pick up enough weight? I think that 4th defensive tackle spot's open, up for grabs, and we'll see. We'll see where who wants to seize that job with Thomas Gore leaving. All right. Let's see. Anybody else got any questions here? Getting close to the end here, but want to make sure we get everybody. Let's see. Bruto saying, I read an article saying we lose 3 games, FSU, Louisville, and USF. Agree. It's a tough schedule. Or it's not, let me say it again. It's not a tough schedule, relatively speaking. But Miami loses these kind of games. There's teams that can beat Miami on the schedule. USF, Miami should win that game. But USF this year is good enough at USF to beat Miami. Louisville at Louisville is a tough game for Miami, even though, again, Miami should win. FSU has been the better team, last couple of years. So, that's something you have to respect. Although I think Miami's much better equipped to beat them this year due to some of the failures FSU's had in recruiting in the portal. So, yeah, we can lose all 3 of those games. We can win all 3 of those games. I think the expectation has to be double digits and a chance to win the ACC. I think that's where we're at as a program. And anything less than that will probably be a step back.
We need to win 10 games. I'm not saying we're going to win 10 games because, like I said, we're all scarred, and I just won't predict anything, but we need to win 10 games. So that's all on the coaches, the players. They got to step up to the plate. So in our whole schedule, you could say we can win all those games and we can lose all those games. That's the way it's been. It's hard to identify 3. I'm sure there's more on that schedule that you could say you could lose to UF.
100%. And that to me is the tone setter, because Miami's better than UF. They're going to be favored over UF, assuming no injuries. UF really had a bad defense last year. They lost their top edge rusher, their top defensive player to Ole Miss. They lost their best offensive player to the NFL draft with Ricky Pearsall going first round. So they were a bad team last year, a losing team last year, worse than us, and they've lost their 2 best players. We've added players. They have not added as much. So you think it should be a gap, but you're playing against an in-state rival on the road, first game, a lot of pressure. UF does have some good players. I think their quarterback is better than people think, Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz is going to be an NFL quarterback. I think he's better than people give him credit for. And he has a great receiver, Wilson, number 3, who is going to give us problems. So UF has some stuff, but Miami is the better team. Miami should win that game. That game's going to really set the tone, and they really need to take care of business that game because they are the better team and they will be favored.
It's a building block. I think they also should win that game, but you got to win that game. Go on the road, playing an SEC team. That's what you're building to be an SEC team. So got to take advantage of it. Got to build a block and then move on to your schedule.
New King God wants to know, how's Markeith Williams doing at safety? Will he get playing time this year? I think he will. I think he's on the right track.
Good player.
One thing about Markeith Williams is he can almost play corner with his movement skills. I've heard that from multiple people around there, that if you put him at corner, he's the one safety along with Mish Powell that has the movement skills to survive at corner. So we're talking about being athletic at safety with cover skills. He has that. Plus, he was a very good ball hawk in high school, showed some instincts in limited time he's been on the field. Needs to get bigger, but he's been in the program for 3 years, so he's gained a little bit of weight. But I think that's somebody who's trending upwards, and we really need him to do his thing. FTW wants to know, could you see Pickett, this Booker Pickett, the defensive end linebacker, carving out a role as a summer enrollee true freshman? Look, I'll say this about Booker Pickett. He's skinny. He was stronger and more wiry and thicker than I thought he would be in person, and then seeing him in the Under Armour game. So he's still skinny, but he's not he's not like a stick like I thought he was. And he was dominant in the Under Armour game. I'm sorry. He was dominant in the Polynesian Bowl. He had 2 sacks in each of those games and dominated practice. So could he carve out a role as a situational pass rusher? I wouldn't put it past him. He knows how to rush the passer, and we'll just have to see when he gets here. Getting here in summer is not the ideal situation. You'd like him to get here earlier. Marquise Lightfoot, Cole McConaughey, the other 2 defensive ends that signed with Miami were here and did some nice things. But, Booker Pickett shows he can get to the quarterback. He could. Guidry's going to do a lot of funny stuff this year with all the talent he has and the versatility he has. He has multiple guys, like we mentioned, Bain and Messidor going inside. Guys can drop. Guys can do different things. And I think Booker Pickett, his deal is rushing the passer. And if he gets here and is hard to block, he'll find a role. All right, here's a good question, and I want you to take a crack at it too, Seth. Luis Delgadillo wants to know, who's your breakout player for this year? So I'll let you start, Seth. You got one?
One guy. The easy pick is Cam Ward. He's he's going to put up numbers. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. The guy's going to put up numbers. So you want to say he starts with him. You can go from him. You can say the running back, a receiver, a tight end, but it's all coming from him. So I'm going to say Cam, and it's easy. It's an easy player to pick, but that's the guy. That's the guy you're going to ride with. That's the guy that has Mario so juiced up. It's Cam.
Yep, can't argue with that. I'm going to say, as a result of Cam, a guy that I think is going to have a great year, and this is a late breakout for this player because of injuries. But I think Elijah Arroyo, if he stays healthy, will be the best tight end in the conference and one of the best tight ends in the country. I've seen Will Mallory. I've seen Brevin Jordan. I'm sorry. I've seen them all. I've seen Njoku. We've seen a lot of NFL tight ends up close in recent years, going back all the way to Shockey. I was there for Shockey's first practice when no one knew who he was. He had just gotten off from Oklahoma JUCO, and he was catching everything with nothing on his arms. Anyone who was there that day remembers that. So, anyways, I've seen a lot of these tight ends. Elijah Arroyo is an NFL tight end all day. All day, he can block. He's got size. He can run. He can run with the ball. He can run routes. He can catch the ball high pointed. He catches with his hands. He's got great attitude. He has some speed. I'd say he's probably 4.6-ish, maybe low 4.7s, but probably in the 4.6 range. So I think that Elijah Arroyo is an NFL tight end all day, and with Cam Ward and a clean bill of health, I think you see him have a monster season as the best tight end in the ACC.
Yep.
Uncle Joey wants to know any news on the new stadium. No new stadium, man. I think, listen, Miami, the money I'm worried about with Miami right now is the NIL. Which, by the way, if you guys want to contribute to Canes Connection, canesconnection.com, Miami's official NIL collective, promo code CIS. That is who you want. If you care about Miami's financial success or Miami spending, that's where the money gets the most bang for the buck is NIL, because that is where the players that directly affects your player personnel, and that's going to have the biggest result on our happiness on Saturdays. I don't see a stadium in the cards,
and that's not coming from me or for D or from the bureaucrats that work for the school. It's coming from the actual players. Like, they really, honestly, and I've spoken to them. They don't care so much about facilities anymore. They don't care about the stadium per se, but they care about the money. And so that's coming from our NIL. And so that's why it's so imperative that, especially now, because we're not winning it. So for us, we need even more. We have to pay a little bit more than, say, at Georgia, because we're not winning yet. So we need the money is important for us.
Yep. Dagan wants to know, we see 10 personnel or at least more multiple in offense. We have more receivers, so we can't see that. But look, we have Elijah Arroyo. So if you have the best tight end in the ACC, and I'm not saying he's proven that yet, but let's say, I think in practice, Cam Ward, the first person he talks about is Elijah Arroyo when he gets a mic in front of him, along with Restrepo, who Seth mentioned. You don't want him to necessarily go to the bench, because even if he's just there to block on a screen, he's going to overpower the defensive back. Plus, if he catches, he can run over the defensive back. He's a mismatch size-wise in terms of boxing out a smaller defensive back. If he's against a linebacker, he's going to beat the linebacker with his speed and route running. So, yeah, I think you could see some 10 personnel. It's air raid. You have a lot of receivers. You have Cam Ward. But I don't see Elijah Arroyo leaving the field too much unless he's just tired. And if that's the case, you still have Riley Williams, who's a very, very talented player.
Very talented. And those, unlike with Van Dyke, who obviously was a pocket passer and obviously was very fixated on Restrepo, Cam goes out of the pocket a lot. He's kind of like that. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but kind of like Mahomes-esque, where he goes out of the pocket and he feels very comfortable out there. And guess what? Tight ends stick out. They're very easy to see. And he throws to them. So it's going to be a different offense. I think the ball will go around, spread out to more athletes, more players, and we have more players and more athletes. Our receivers are better. Our tight ends are better. Our running back is better. So it's should be a very fun year offensively. I think the fans are going to like it because they haven't seen that much. He's fun. It's a fun guy to watch.
100%. I answered this question earlier, but just in case any missed it, Greg Watkins, what freshman do you see as an impact? Elijah Lofton, Jordan Lyle, JoJo Trader, Nikar, Bobby Pruitt, the linebacker. I'm not sure. Am I missing anybody, Seth? You think they could be impactful as you saw in spring?
Those are the guys.
There's an opportunity at defensive tackle. That's a hard position
Right,
for you.
we don't know. We haven't seen them. They're not even here. That's part of it.
Right. And Armando Blunt was nursing a shoulder injury.
Right.
So you could see those guys if they blow
Could
it.
be. We just haven't seen it.
Yeah. But that's a tough position for freshmen.
Yeah.
That's a grown man position, but those guys are super talented. Justin Scott, 5-star, Armando Blunt, 5-star, Tavius Jones, multi-sport, freak of nature. So you do have some talents at that position. So you never know. All right, man. I think that's it, Seth. You got anything you wanna add?
I can answer JAC's question. So the football facilities are on, but down, like not as elaborate as they were. So, and they're not going to be the same timetable. It's not going to be for the centennial, but they are still working on it, but just toned down. And that's basically the same thing I told you about the NIL, which is where the resources are going. And so they still want the offices. They still want a lot of the stuff, but just not as extravagant as it originally was planned.
Yep. Key to this whole thing, CanesConnection.com. If you guys aren't part of it, sign up. CIS, 20% off the first month. You get a private Zoom where I can be a little even more direct on some of my answers, not so political because more private setting. So sign up for CanesConnection.com, promo code CIS. You get access to all that.
Great questions, guys. Thank you.
All right, fellas, remember, like and subscribe to this podcast. Go to CanesInsight.com, sign up for free. Tune into our daily podcast every day, and we'll keep it rolling, man. We'll be on tomorrow. Seth, thank you again. Thank you for combing your hair so tight and keeping it here. And thanks to everybody for joining us with your great questions. Go Canes.
Thanks, guys. Go Canes.